good afternoon and welcome back to Booth Library. We start our third week of activities celebrating the civilization of ancient Egypt. And today we have one of the library's favorite people. She is the graphic designer here in library services, and she's also the university photographer, great artistic comrade in many projects for libraries and universities around the state. So that will be quite a treat. To welcome her will be Dr. Wafik Wabi, the chair of this series.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming and welcome to this session of the Ancient Egypt Symposium. Today we are for a treat. The person behind almost, I say, 90% of the pictures taken, if we take the daily news out of the equation, is Bev Cruse. And that's the reason why the images are so artistic, because she is an artist herself. And the problem with that is that you couldn't see her in these images because she is always behind the camera. So today she will roll and rock the rocks for us from ancient civilization of Egypt to see what these guys did back then to have photography, quote-unquote, version of things. Bev Cruse.
All right. Yay. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I've been really nervous about this because, as I say, I've always been behind the camera. And Jim, you know what? I want to show you a picture of my son. I haven't seen you in a while. And let's see here. He's changed so much since you saw him last. Well, I must have left this picture by the door. I was using him as a doorstop earlier. I'm sorry. That's just to get you going. Those are my thoughts as I agreed to talk about Egyptian art or images from Egypt, early Egypt. And at first, I thought, yeah, that piece of cake. And then once I got to digging into it and really seeing, it's like, wow, no Photoshop. I can't run up to the bookstore and get some new pens or pencils or film, whatever I might need to create a project, photo albums, those type of things. That this civilization or this culture actually used what was available there way back BC, 2000 BC. Some of the things that I'm going to show you today around 2000 BC on up. And everything that I looked at, I gained a new appreciation for, and I'm an artist from the photography standpoint, and it is considered an art, but to look at how they documented their past, celebrated their families, their culture, and those type of things, I feel pretty lazy, really, if you stop and think about it. And as you're doing, creating a statue, and you hit the hammer wrong, you start over again. And many of the pieces that I looked at were, fairly large pieces. Even look at the pyramids. It's like, what were you thinking? That piece there is not going to hold that wall up. You've got to start over again. The monumental task of what they had to accomplish with the resources that they had. And as the hieroglyphics and things that I looked at, and the colors, the paintings and that type of thing that they didn't have a jar of paint they went and pulled off of the shelf. They had to create those colors themselves. So I really gained a new appreciation for the early artists that paved the way, if you will, for what we're able to do today. And it gives me a new sense of appreciation for creativity, talent, those things. And it's they had a lot of spare time on their hands if they weren't involved in construction of the pyramids, but they didn't have the resources that we have. I can walk into my office, sit down, And Dr. Lanham can say, I need a picture for, boom, 30 minutes later I can usually photograph it, print it, and have it to him. They were spending a lot of time to accomplish those things. And in the hieroglyphics that you look at, it might be the whole story of a season of harvest, or some crisis, or the lifetime of a king, those type of things. And those you can't accomplish overnight. So, and I found this cartoon. I had to add a little bit. It was like, how on earth did they do that? And I've always loved this cartoon strip. And so this was what I found was, they're very creative. They managed to capture things in a sometimes kind of a crude way, but you did know what they were trying to accomplish. A lot of things that they did were in their art, either was for tributes to royalty, might be for funerals, lots of artwork for funerals. They really decorated the place up, and it was all permanent. We're lucky enough to be able to, that some of that is still available now to look at. And then their projects, they did a lot of decorative arts and utilitarian pieces that, again, they used to show different things about in their class. And then let's go on up. So, technical difficulties. I have to move the mouse over. Clear off?
Oh, no, there you go.
Okay. Okay. I'm a Mac person. So this is tough for me. But if you look at the details in the images, and this was a long stretch of artwork that I have pieces broken down on through here that show the detail. This was from Thebes. It's the tomb of Ramos. It's a wall painting of a funeral procession, and during the period of 1580 to 1085. And that threw me too. It's reverse. It messed me up because I thought, oh, Bev, you have a typo. But no. So then the next, all the detail, and then we've broken it down into parts of the procession, and you'll see all the colors and the sketches, and then more on the hieroglyphics in the back, up in the back wall. A lot of detail. Here's another section of it, and that's the female mourners that they've painted into the setting. The tomb, this is where they're bringing the tributes in. Bringing tribute, that looks like vegetables and that type of fruits. Looks like we've got a leopard hanging there being given for the tribute. And then more servants bearing produce to the tomb. And then the cattle and more workers. There's a close-up detail of the cow herd that they're showing. So the detail and things that, they're creating this just from their memory, and it's left as a history for us today. We rely on cameras and digital files and things, and as I look through this, how many of you leave your digital files on your camera until it crashes and then you have no photographs? Or you put it off onto your computer and then you get a new computer and you don't bother to transfer your files or back up your files. Your history is disappearing because of that. And they preserve their history in the tombs so that we could look at it today and see what their life is like. Portrait of a lady. I didn't see any ugly women in any of the artwork. I think that's great. You know, now maybe they did have Photoshop, who knows? But lots of beautiful women. Then this is the from the tomb. It's just the ceiling of the tomb, and it's a golden room cosmological scene, which again, lots of detail across the bottom. Was like layers and how long do you think it took them to create that? A lot longer than it would take me in Photoshop. You know, they can't copy and paste on those pieces. And another thing, the papyrus was popular for them to paint on, and this is from one of the books, and it's tells a story of how Annie's widow's grieving. The detail, the colors, and then all the hieroglyphics at the bottom, it's just, I can just see hours. It kind of reminds me of the ILA history poster. You know, blood, sweat, and tears. But they were dedicated. That was their specialty. And thank goodness that someone found that as a vocation, that they could record those for us today. And then the next one again is this piece is on wood and wood and steel, a worshiper adoring the state. The colors are so bright and such a nice variety of things. And to think that they've held up all these years just kind of blows me away. The other thing is if they were doing sculpture, they didn't have a chance, like I said, they didn't have a chance to redo it. Once you hit the chisel with the hammer, it was there. And so I thought this cartoon kind of brought it home for us. And this piece here is the head of a queen. And they think it was made out of yellow jasper, which I'm not sure what that material is. But they think from the design of it that it was probably it was from a composite statue where only the exposed parts, so the hands, the face, were made of jasper. And then because of the yellow color, that indicated that it was a woman. And then the size and the detail in her mouth, the scale, implies that it was probably a queen. And they think that just from this amount of the statue, that they believe it was probably Akhenaten's principal queen, Nefertiti, or his secondary queen, Kia. I apologize for messing those names up, but didn't learn that in Photoshop. Another example of the sketches in, this is a relief, and I would imagine that it's limestone. Most of the other pieces were of limestone that they've created those from. And this tells a story of the warriors slaying the enemies. And very similar, we have pictures today of military and war, hunters, the culture that they had to, and it's not been that long ago. Hunters went out and we used to eat fried rabbit, So those are things that, and I have pictures of that with my dad doing that. So this is their way of preserving that. And again, the hieroglyphics that are in us, they were just like, that's kind of like graffiti. From today's, they can't leave a blank wall. They've got to get in there and dig something out and move things around. Another piece that, again, perhaps the hieroglyphics are to hide the mistakes. What do you think? See, yeah. Or, oh shoot, I didn't mean to do that, so I'll just put another person in this scene no one will remember or no one will know. So, I'm sure that there were little ways that you could conceal your mistakes for it. The next piece is, this is a sculpture's model and it's been broken, but it's made of limestone again, and around 380 to 280. And it's a man with an ibex and a monkey. An ibex is a species of a wild goat. That's over here in his hand. It's pretty pocked up, but yet you can still make out what it is. The next piece is, this one is made from black statite, and what that is a soap rock or a soapstone. And this represents the magical smell. This is an amulet that's inscribed with magical spells to ward off stings and bees from deadly animals and insects, representing wild nature and chaos. The head of the protective god Bes above the Horus strengthened the magical powers. How would you like to carry that around in your pocket so you take care of your bee stings? Actually, it wasn't too bad. It was only 5 1/4 inches tall and 2 1/2 inches wide. So that wouldn't be too bad for that kind of protection, I guess. The next piece is a piece from the 3rd to 4th century, and this represents or commemorates the death of, and I didn't look her, Aurelia Artemis. Perhaps you can tell me who she is.
One of the goddesses.
Okay. And because of this is imported marble, and the presence of the Greek inscription as well as the woman's pose point to the Greek family, possibly Christian. She looks very comfy there on that marble, doesn't she? The next piece then is as well for her, and because of the imported marble again and the woman's elaborate dress, it suggests that she came from a wealthy family. So it appears that if you're wealthy, you get marble, and if you're not, you get limestone. They do something for you. But that would be an indicator of the status of the family. As we go on, some of the things that I saw were, and I keep stepping in your way over here, I'm sorry. Some of the things that I looked at, they were kind of over the top, and I thought this little cartoon really represented that well. Some of the artists, of course, took it the next step. This statue is of pure silver, and it is in, let's see, its measurement's 9 1/2 inches tall. So I don't know how much silver is now per ounce, but that's a nice little collector's piece in memory of a woman. Now then, there were no names associated with this particular statue, so we don't know. It could have been a king's significant other or his wife, or notice how they always make him nice and trim and pretty and all, though, but out of pure silver. The next piece, the statuette of Amun, is this is gold. Of course, men get gold and women get the silver. And this piece is 6 7/8 inches tall. So that's a lot of money standing there. So that would indicate that this is a very honored person, wealthy family. The next piece is tapestry shows up in a lot of the pieces or the art that I was looking at, and they always have a significant meaning. This was a Nereid, actually a sea nymph, excuse me, and it's renowned for the large sea nymph or Nereid. The mythological Nereid composed of a naked woman's torso, descending into a fish, what we would know as a mermaid now probably, and holds a colored glass bowl in her hand. She only wears expensive, costly jewelry. She has a large emerald around her neck, and there's sapphires. Look at those things hanging off her ears. And then she also has the halo around her head. The next piece that I thought was interesting Again, this is terracotta. This was the first piece that I ran across that was terracotta, and they have several terracotta, limestone, and then the metals are usually seem to be the most common materials for them to do their sculptures. This piece was originally painted in the red, black, yellow, and white, and it came from the Egyptian tomb. And they think that it was probably a Christian woman because of the cross around her neck. This is faded out some now, but the colors were more brightly colored. Hashput, Hatshepsut. Okay, thank you, Wafik. This happens to be one of the best known of the several of the female rulers in Egypt. And this piece, this is life size of her. Now then, I don't know what material, it didn't show what material, but to be life size, it's 76 3/4 inches tall. And she apparently was very full of herself as a leader, a ruler, that she felt like she was qualified to take over and run a country, which is rather uncommon in this period. And then the other pieces that I ran across were, as I said, they were either decorative art or utilitarian. A lot of vase to carry water and those type of things, and they decorated or painted scenes, images, and different items of their period on their ceramic or vases. Terracotta. The next piece, this is the arm panel from the King Thutmose. Tutmosis? Okay, the fourth. Around 1400 to 1390 BC. The detail on it is exquisite. I was thinking, this is carved out of ficus tree, which I always thought those were just the annoying trees that shed in your house. I never envisioned it them growing large enough to be able to manage a piece like that. But that's pretty incredible. I'd like to see the rest of the piece. That's just enough to kind of whet your appetite and see what's going on. And then this is a jar in the form of a woman. Now she's a little more plump, but the purpose of the jar was to carry water, those type of things for them. Terracotta. Okay. Again, they some of the things are really kind of, in my sense of the word, they're kind of off the wall, and I wonder what inspired them to go there. And this is Egypt blue, and is that a stone, Wafik? Mm-hmm. But it's such a brilliant blue that they've carved it from. Lots of detail. And this is, again, this is painted limestone. The colors that they've used to paint are so lifelike and natural that they've come up with. It just amazes me that they're able to duplicate those type of things, and to be that long ago. And this is another high priest offering the Theban triad on a throne. This actually was made of granite. Again, you wouldn't want to tap the wrong place with that, or you'd be starting all over again on it as well. I see great patience coming out of these pieces as I look at them, that it isn't something you can do in a New York minute. They've had to really think and get the design up here and then begin to shape those pieces. So just a really incredible talent. This is a bas relief of warriors, and it again is painted limestone. And see the details across there of their different types of weapons. I think I'd rather have the axe than the sycamore branch, but hey, you know, you get whenever you get desperate, you take whatever you can. And then this, a hippopotamus hunt. I'm wondering what they're going to do with a hippopotamus if they get it, considering the size of their boat. But it's, again, the detail and the colors, and the geese, ducks, whatever they're going across, flying across. It's just amazing what they've come up with. Again, the beauty of women come up again and again and again. I believe this, again, is another piece of limestone. This, they think, is, yeah, it's carved. And they believe that this was a sculptor's model or study in preparation of doing a final piece for their client. She has a headdress that's topped with the protective serpents, and then on the other side there's which I didn't see that other picture, but there's two sides to it, so they could have 3D. But again, it's out of limestone. I think limestone is a nice soft material that they could work with rather quickly, and then to get a model or a pattern, and then to go on and do the heavy duty work. This is here's this word again. Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut. Okay, that's a statue of her, and she's beautiful, isn't she? Again, this is painted limestone. This is the head of a woman. It's a marble pigment. They don't know for sure whether it's number 2 or number 3. It's probably close enough since they were mother-daughter that it would be easy to find out. They would resemble each other no matter what. 10.5 inches tall.
Excuse me.
Sure. Okay, the next two guys are they're rather entertaining. They actually have a purpose. They're ugly, but this is called a coal stick holder in form of a best image. A coal tube is actually a makeup that is a traditional Middle Eastern makeup. So how would you like to have him holding your eyebrow pencil for you every morning when you get up and go to get ready to go to work? Sort of a whimsical looking guy. And then this is a cosmetic jar in the form of the god vest. And it says he has many domestic duties, and which is one of them is to protect your cosmetics and being full of imperfections. According to ancient fascination with opposites, perfect as a god associated with beauty, his hands, if you'll notice, they're in forms of fists, and there's holes in top of each one. And those were meant to hold applicator sticks that are now lost through the transition. So, which I thought was awesome. Okay, so a couple of cute little guys. Again, another vase painted. This is a terracotta style, and the 3100 to 2500 BC. The detail is beautiful, the colors and things, very pleasant to look at, and show images of that period. Can you read that on the bottom?
A number on the bottom?
Yeah, actually I think all these art pieces are numbered. If you notice that as a trend, I think the repository that they're being held at, that's a number for that. Okay, and tapestries again were very popular. This one was from wool, and the three in the center are the Holy Michael, Holy Mary, and the Holy Gabriel. And then if you'll notice around the edges, these are the apostles, images of the apostles. And this is in centimeters, and I don't know, I couldn't change it out for you, but 178 centimeters. But that's in the 500s. So there's a lot of detail in there that they've done by hand, as opposed to having a machine to do that for them. The next couple of things are statues of husband and wife, or royal acquaintances, however that would be. I let all my acquaintances hold my left breast. So, hey. This is from a limestone. That woman, if she were alive today, she probably wished that it had blown away in the wind. But again, notice the detail, the hair. Most pieces, the men are much larger. They're represented as much larger people than the women. And my take on it is they want to, they're the superior being and the little woman following around behind them. But that could be incorrect. But as that was one of the things that I noticed when I went through the art, and it made me think of the students in the, I go take basketball players, and the little boys would always stand up on their tiptoes because they wanted to be tall. So, the artist that you've commissioned to do a statue of you, you can pretty much tell them that you want your hair to be really beautiful, and you want your pecs to be, better than anyone else's, and you want your wife or female companion to be the most beautiful thing that walked on the earth, and you had those controls. And we can't dispute that, because this is all we have to go by. That's a downside of, photographs. Usually before Photoshop, they didn't lie. What you saw was what you got. This is the relief of a husband and wife. Again, it's sands, the limestone. Notice all the detail, and again, all the hieroglyphics in the background that are showing. This includes, we have a haunch of beef, a goose, a bunch of grapes. The inscriptions beside their heads identify them. If you know what hieroglyphics are, you can manage that. Okay, but again, a very detailed piece that today we would think that somebody made a mold and just mass-produced them, and that isn't necessarily the case there. The last thing that I noticed a lot of was, and I didn't, I could have given you a whole nother hour on coffin decorations, the way they decorated their coffins and their, the mummy masks and all those things. But we're all pretty familiar with those things. But the detail, the paints, the colors are really very rich, and a lot of time was spent to create those things. This piece was painted on fig wood. And my final cartoon for the day is it'll make sense to our great grandkids. All that they, and that's tongue in cheek, but luckily they've managed to recover from tombs and share, get into museums and things. We get it, and we, recognize the talents that they possessed, and the detail and the ability to create their paints, their supplies, to leave behind such a legacy is awesome. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
No hard questions.
Any questions? Artistic photography Kodak thing, yes. The microphone, please.
I don't want a microphone.
No, it's
You have to, so you can be on the, sorry. You don't have to sing, just ask a question.
What does the E stand for on BCE?
I don't know. Is it before? I don't know. BC is before Christ. I don't. Wafik, do you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
It has been always for 2,000 years before Christ, because that was a dividing history thing. But recently, to be politically correct, because some people don't like to say Christ's name for some reason, they say, okay, let's call it Common Era. So they came up with B4, the Common Era, that you and I know what it is, without mentioning the name, like saying the N-word or something. So it's,
Okay.
I heard some speaker last week in a presentation saying it is unethical to mention the name of Christ, saying you say before Christ, because some people don't believe in him, so you don't ethically mention it so that you don't hurt their feelings. Hence, the BCE is more so.
And I have one more question. You had a couple of Christian relief pictures, or one was a tapestry. I wouldn't think that, that's the first I noticed about Egyptians having any depiction of Christian symbols. I thought they worshiped the pharaohs.
That will have to, Wafik will have to address that.
Well, historically, history and tradition say that Egypt became Christian in the 1st century. So on the day of Pentecost, many of the Alexandrians and the Egyptians were in Jerusalem for the Hajj or pilgrimage, and they became converted to Christianity, came back and evangelized. Then added to this the tradition that Mark, the apostle that wrote the Gospel of Mark, went to Egypt and evangelized and became the first pope of this Coptic Orthodox that became Coptic Orthodox Church. So by the end of the 1st century, by the year 90, 95, almost 99% of Egypt became Christian. And they went away from worshiping the pharaohs and worshiping the statues and all this kind of thing. But they were persecuted, so they were kind of underground church, kind of. So actually the pharaonic thing was kind of diminuting 300 years before Christ, when the Greeks came and then the Romans came 100 years or so, give and take, before Christ. So the worship of the pharaohs were really in decline at that time. They were kind of pagans without knowing a certain God, until Christianity came and so forth. The ones with crosses in it, I have some questions regarding this, because they were persecuted for this sign. So you don't do this and go and say, hey, I'm Christian, come and persecute me or something. So did this answer your question? Okay.
You know, the other thing that you might remember is, just because they have a cross on doesn't mean that's actually what it was. That was a sculpture. And the artist, artistic freedom might have added that.
Yeah, most probably.
You don't know one way or the other.
Yeah.
You know, that's the deceiving part of photography and artwork, is actually what you're seeing is what I see in my picture. What an artist paints is what they're painting, their vision for you to see. So their interpretation of something isn't always correct, as well as your interpretation of their creation isn't correct.
And the dating times, I have some, not questions, but I need to be liberal a little with the dating time. Because by the year 400 or so, when Rome became Christian, and the time of Constantine and so forth, Christians came above the ground, and maybe some of these were at that 300 something, 400 thing. So, and when we dated in the 21st century, we say it was nearly whatever. So most probably these crosses were in the time when Christians became known.
Yeah, and a lot of the pieces that I looked at, almost all of them had the C or circa 2000. So they couldn't really narrow it down any more than a general. Well, you know, if you're speaking in general terms of 100 years, look what has happened in the last 5 years. Now then, thinking on a scale of 100 years, how much can change just in 100 years. So when they're looking at a span, they're saying, oh, 2000 to 1650 or so. That's a pretty long span of time that there are a lot of things that could have changed or happened. So, it gives you a sense of when it happened, but not really, a totally accurate sense of when it happened.
For example, if you look to the picture or the image of the Sphinx that we see here, and you see the stela in the bottom, there is maybe 2,000 years between this and that. The Sphinx was there, and in one of the renovations, after 1,000 years of its construction, it was ancient at the time, 1,000 years, when somebody tried to renovate it. But we look at it today as one piece. I mean, we look at it as, because it's kind of... Any other questions or comments? Yes, let me give you this so we tape your...
In one of the pictures, and you mentioned it, relief, what does that mean?
What relief means?
A relief is just, it's a surface, it's a 3D surface. So it might only be about, Dr. Lanham, we saw lots of reliefs when we were out. Probably half inch to an inch. But it's just a thin representation of, and it's just enough 3D to give you a sense of depth, changes, that shapes, those type of things, rather than being a flat image.
And also the relief and stela or stele is something like this, a plate or a surface that you can write on, or so it's kind of a relief of something. Talking about the 3D thing, you noticed in all actually the drawings of the ancient Egyptians and carvings, they didn't have the natural size or dimensions, meaning when they draw a person looking like this, they draw him this part as if it is this dimension, and they have it look like this, or draw the hands. They don't have the three-dimensional...
everything's flat.
Everything is flat, yes.
And they've just turned the parts of the body enough to give the illusion of being three-dimensional.
Yes.
But, yeah.
And
sometimes the proportions are pretty good. A lot of times they aren't. Some of the things that I, ran across, the eyes were like twice the size of what they would have normally been, or maybe their hand was much larger in proportion to their shoulder or their arm.
To emphasize something, like they do in caricatures, they have a certain nose or ear or something bigger than other. Another question regarding our human nature. Why is it that we want to capture the moment or seize the moment and freeze it in time if we like, the smiles or sometimes the tears? We want to look back into the memory of something and document it. I mean, cows and horses don't do that. When you drive on the highway, they're happy eating and grazing and no problem of... What is it in our human nature?
Well, first of all, I'll say, so you think the cattle aren't.
Yes, to be politically correct.
They might appear to be happy cows, but, probably there's some tormented ones out there. I think that it's the emotional side of us, the emotional part of our brain that we like to feel good, but yet there are things that you run across, that little, my dad's screwdriver, for instance. Those things trigger memories and emotions in you. And I think that's the side of your brain that it thirsts for sense of good, bad, how you cope with things, things that you like to hold on to, that it's just stuff, but you can store a lot of things in your brain and not have a lot of baggage with you that you can hold dear to you, recall when you need to recall it, those type of things. As I showed you, I brought in my rocks just as a kickoff, and can you imagine having to drag all that stuff around? And thank goodness we've moved to this point where we have photographs that we can look at them on our phone or or I can remember, there are things that I photographed in my career as a photographer that are so real that it was like I just photographed it 30 minutes ago. All the senses that go with it, smell, how warm it was that day, or the temperature, who was around, the emotions that were going on with that. So I really think it's just it's your connection to whatever, and some people have no feeling about stuff. It's like, oh, it's just stuff. And other people, I have friends, they just hang on. They don't want to get rid of anything because it means a lot to them. So I think it's all emotion.
And building on this, what you said, the Hollywood syndrome, so to say, people like to get pictured and depicted and doing this with their enemies, or look at me doing this. So the showmanship was always there, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, and presenting yourself in the best light, like having your statues, making you look like you're the king of the hill type thing, and that you have a beautiful wife. And we have those controls and those hidden, needs or desires to portray. I don't know if you're trying to satisfy yourself or you're trying to satisfy other people, but, it's something that people tend to do.
Well, any other questions or comments? Now make sure when you look at pictures and images of EIU to make sure that who is standing behind his image. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.